facts and figures, the results that this government is producing for hard-working New Zealanders.
I call Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I would have a great deal more respect for that member who just resumed her seat and her views on the representation of women in this House if she wasn't standing by while her government reduced the equal representation of women on state sector boards and that target, if she didn't stand by while her government voted against paid parental leave, while she didn't stand by while her government reduced the training incentive allowance for sole parents, if she actually stood up for women in this House when it mattered with her vote, I would have a great deal more confidence and respect for what she has to say about how women are represented in Parliament. But, Mr Speaker, on to the real issues, not about Maggie Thatcher at all, because those aren't the real issues that New Zealanders are thinking about. What they are thinking about is the cost of living. And what they know now as a result of this week in Parliament is that the Prime Minister John Key is clueless. They used to think that he was just gormless, but now they know he's absolutely clueless because he said so himself. And today we learned, if people didn't know this before, that what Hekia Parata said before is completely wrong. Just 10 minutes ago in this House, Hekia Parata stood up and said that the government wants to keep money in people's pockets because it thinks they know best. However, we know that the government's clearly got its hands in people's pockets because today we heard that petrol tax is going up to the tune of $20 billion more than the government needs for the roading that it has planned. That's $20 billion that is coming out of the pockets of New Zealand parents, New Zealand families, that they could be spending on other things because that government made a decision to put the tax up for no real reason at all. And I want to remind New Zealanders that from the 1st of April this year, they are paying more in ACC levies than they ought to be paying. Because even by the officials' own estimates, the estimates from Treasury, this government is taking up to $2 billion each year out of the pockets of hard-working employees and employers in New Zealand for no other reason than they can. Because, Mr Speaker, that money can't be spent on anything else but injuries and accidents because it is an ACC levy. The officials have told us that the government is taking more than $2 billion more than it needs to cover injuries and accidents. That will sit in surplus in an ACC account, not going anywhere, not doing anything productive, just simply sitting there creating a surplus in an attempt to make it look as though the government's the whole Crown operating expenses are going into surplus. Well, Mr Speaker, it's a nonsense. It's a cruel trick being played by that government on every worker and every employer who is paying more in ACC levies than they need to cover the costs of injuries and accidents. And the question needs to be asked, why is the government doing this? It's doing it because it promised to bring the books back into surplus, and the only way it is able to do that, because it is not growing the economy, it is not getting jobs, and it is not actually bringing productivity in this country, the only way they could do it was to unfairly go into the pockets of workers and employers and take more out in ACC levies than what they actually need. And today we learned that that government's decision to actually reduce funding for pharmaceuticals and put prescription costs up has increased the cost of pharmaceuticals by 9.3%. So that's what's driving the cost of living, Mr Speaker, not anything to do with a robust, burgeoning economy, but decisions made by that government quite deliberately to take money in petrol taxes that they don't need, to take money in ACC levies that they do not need for accidents and injuries, and to actually make sure that New Zealanders are paying more for these prescription charges. Those are the things that are creating real stresses on New Zealand families because they can't afford to be propping up that government's commitments that it made to go into surplus. When they made that commitment, New Zealanders honestly believed they were talking about actually getting the economy going. New Zealanders honestly believed they were going to go into surplus by getting out of recession. But no, They are getting into that surplus surreptitiously by raising levies, raising taxes and raising the cost of living for every New Zealander.
Nikki Wagner.
Much, Mr. Speaker. It's great to be speaking today with the other women MPs for the National Party.